Hey guys, it's Alex, and today I'm here with the popcorn opening paragraphs tag, which was originally created by Adrian over at Stripcover Lit, and I originally saw this on the channel Bookish, so I will link both of those videos down below. I highly recommend you checking both of them out because they're both really worthwhile to watch. Basically, the premise of this tag is that you pick at least 3 books with opening paragraphs that you really enjoy and that really stood out to you, or that are very meaningful to you. I have picked 5 books. I don't know how much in depth I'm going to go on these opening paragraphs, but I'm going to talk a little bit about why I chose them. I originally had 6, but the 6th one was The Old Man and the Sea, which Bookish also used for his list, so I sort of took that as an excuse to pare it down to 5 because 6 was going to get a little bit long. All of these books were 5 stars for me, and I've talked about all of them at some point before on my channel, so they'll probably look familiar to you. The first book I'm going to read from is The Lost: A Search for 6 of 6 Million by Daniel Mendelsohn. This is the only nonfiction book on this list, but it's one of my absolute favorites. It's the story of a man who was trying to research what happened to some of his relatives during the Holocaust. His grandfather's brother and his family who disappeared without a trace, and were presumed dead. This book isn't about finding them alive. It's just finding out specifically what happened, as opposed to just assuming that they were dead. And it's a very interesting, very well done book. Some time ago, when I was 6 or 7 or 8 years old, it would occasionally happen that I'd walk into a room and certain people would begin to cry. The rooms in which this happened were located, more often than not, in Miami Beach, Florida, and the people on whom I had this strange effect were, like everyone in Miami Beach in the mid-1960s, old. Like nearly everyone else in Miami Beach at that time, or so it seemed to me then, these people were Jews. Jews of the sort who were likely to lapse when sharing prized bits of gossip or coming to the long-delayed endings of stories or the punchlines of jokes, into Yiddish, which of course had the effect of rendering the climaxes, the points, of these stories and jokes incomprehensible to those of us who were young. The reason I picked this book for that opening paragraph is because I absolutely adore the way it opens, and the whole book is kind of written like that. Daniel Mendelsohn has a very tangential writing style. He will start at one place and then go off on a completely different tangent, which segues into another topic, which segues into another topic, and on, until he's somehow made his way full circle and he's back to his original point, and everything he said makes complete sense. And I feel like that's the way this book starts. It starts with one point, and he just sort of segues into a number of different points. And obviously that was just the first paragraph, so you don't get the ending so much. I'd have to read like a couple of pages, and that would just be excessively long. But I think it's an absolutely lovely way of writing, and it's one of the things I adore the most about this book. The second book I have on this list is one of those Hideous books where the mother dies by Sonya. This is a YA contemporary that's written in verse, so I'm sort of going to stretch what opening paragraph means, and I'm going to read the first poem from this book. American Airlines, Flight 161. I'm not that depressed, considering that this gigantic silver bullet with wings is blasting me away from my whole entire life. Away from Lizzie Brody, my best friend in the world. Away from Ray Johnston, my first real boyfriend. Not that depressed, considering I've been kidnapped by this monstrous steel pterodactyl, and it's flying me all the way to LA to live with my father, who I've never even met because he's such a scumbag that he divorced my mother before I was even born. I'd say I'm doing reasonably well, considering I'm being dragged 3,000 miles away from all my friends, and my school, and my Aunt Duffy, and the house I've lived in ever since I was born. 3,000 miles away from my mother, and my mother's grave, where she lies in a cold wooden box under 6 feet of dirt, just beginning to rot. I'm not that depressed, considering that I'm trapped on this jumbo poison dart, shooting me away from everything I love. And there's this real weird guy sitting in the seat right behind mine, who keeps picking his nose and eating it. Depressed? Who? Me? The reason I picked this opening paragraph is it's a little bit less literary and less of like a beautiful writing style than a lot of the others on this list, but it's so perfect. Like, I always forget how much I love this book. This is one of those books that doesn't sound as good as it is. And then I read that opening paragraph, or that opening poem, I guess. It reminds me of how much I love Ruby's voice. She's so funny. Like, this is a very sad book, which you get from the opening verse. She talks about how her mother's died and she's going across the country to live with her father, who she really doesn't know. But her voice is very funny. It's a very authentic teenage voice. It's very immature, but it works. And I feel like, at least for me, I get that from the very beginning. And it's so well done. And it makes me happy to read it every single time. The third book on this list is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This was one of my favorite books from last year. I've talked about it a number of times lately. And it's also the only book on this list that has been translated, and I do feel like that's important to note. A convenience store is a world of sound. From the tinkle of the door chime to the voices of TV celebrities advertising new products over the in-store cable network, to the calls of the store workers, the beeps of the barcode scanner, the rustle of customers picking up items and placing them in baskets, and the clacking of heels walking around the store. It all blends into the convenience store sound that ceaselessly caresses my eardrums. I hear the faint rattle of a new plastic bottle rolling into place as a customer takes one out of the refrigerator and look up instantly. A cold drink is often the last item customers take before coming to the checkout till, and my body responds automatically to the sound. I see a woman holding a bottle of mineral water while perusing the desserts and look back down. The thing about this book, and the reason I picked its opening paragraphs for this tag, is because it romanticizes the convenience store. And I worked in a grocery store, so that's not an easy task for me. But it makes it sound so beautiful, and as someone who worked in a grocery store, which is pretty close to a convenience store, it's very accurate. Like, the rhythm that she talks about, and sort of the patterns that you fall into, and how it becomes so easy and familiar is very, very true. And this whole book sort of felt like that. It does sort of get into more weird issues as you delve into its commentary on society and gender roles and such, but the underlying theme of the convenience store and the beauty in the convenience store is just so present in this entire book, and never more so than in the opening paragraphs. And it's just beautiful. Like, I still don't quite understand how Sayaka Murata made the convenience store so beautiful, but she did, and I adore it. Next is one of my favorite books of all time that I never stop talking about on this channel, and that is Long May She Reign by Emerson White. This is a young adult or new adult contemporary. I call it young adult. I think it's shelved as young adult, but it's very much on the line. It takes place while the main character is at college. It's the fourth in a series, and it's about a girl who is the president's daughter. This is the fourth book, so I'm not going to spoil anything. The first paragraph doesn't spoil anything. I just think it's beautiful. The worst part, although it was hard to choose, was that she still cried. A lot. Mostly at night, always alone. Which was risky because her parents inevitably came in to check on her and she'd have to pretend to be asleep. But now it was going on 2 in the morning and she was by herself in her room and she sort of wished that one of them would come in. See how she was. Have a conversation about nothing in particular, maybe. But it was the middle of the night. Normal people were already asleep. Meg pushed away from her desk. Her chair was on rollers now, which was one of the many changes in her life that they didn't really discuss. At least she wasn't using the actual wheelchair anymore. Just a brace and a cane. And her hand, gosh, she could almost move 2 of the fingers now, and yes, it was time for nightly self-pity. Despite this being the 4th book in the series, this was actually the first one that I read, and they are all about the same character, so reading them out of order is not really recommended. But I loved that first paragraph. It set the scene so well, and it was one of those opening paragraphs that just seemed beautiful. Like, it drew me in. It made me care about the characters, and it's so well done in her voice because Meg has this very dry, very sarcastic way of speaking. She's very self-aware. She's very, very intelligent, and I feel like that comes through in the opening paragraphs. Like, yes, she pities herself, but she's also, like, self-aware enough to know that she is, and also deserving enough of self-pity that she's kind of okay with it. She's just like, yep, let's have my little pity party now, time to throw it. I'll get over it, and it'll suck more tomorrow. And I love that. I love this book. I love those opening paragraphs. It's just so well done, and of all the books I've read, like, this drew me in so quickly to the story and made me care so much. The final book, which I left for last because I'm very nervous about reading these opening paragraphs, is Written on the Body by Jeanette Winterson. These are very beautifully written, like stunningly written, and I'm so afraid I'm going to mess up or like get the inflection wrong and stumble over my words a lot, which I'm fairly certain I will because of the way it's written, but it's so beautiful that I couldn't not include it on this list. Why is the measure of love loss? It hasn't rained for 3 months. The trees are prospecting underground, sending reserves of roots into the dry ground, roots like razors to open any artery of water fat. The grapes have withered on the vine. What should be plump and firm, resisting the touch to give itself in the mouth, is spongy and blistered. Not this year, the pleasure of rolling blue grapes between my fingers and thumb, juicing my palm with musk. Even the wasps avoid the thin brown dribble. Even the wasps this year. It was not always so. I am thinking of a certain September. Wood pigeon, red admiral, yellow harvest, orange night. You said I love you. Why is it that the most unoriginal thing we can say to one another is still the thing we long to hear? I love you is always a quotation. You did not say it first, and neither did I, yet when you say it and when I say it, we speak like savages, who have found 3 words and worship them. I did worship them, but now I am alone, on a rock hewn out of my own body. It continues on with a quotation from Caliban, from The Tempest, and I just think it's so beautiful. Like, that's one of the most beautiful opening lines I've heard, and I just adore it. Her whole writing style is like that, and honestly, whenever I'm asked for quotes or anything, this is always the book that I turn to first. I love this book's writing. Jeanette Winterson is such a beautiful writer. This is the only book of hers I read so far, and I love hearing it read out loud. Not by myself, I don't think I do a particularly good job of reading it out loud, but it sounds so beautiful to hear. It had to go on this list. Like, it's stunning. There's a lot to unpack, and I read it very, very slowly, and I have to, like, think over every line, but it's just beautiful. It's so beautiful. Like, I don't know what else to say about this paragraph, except that it's just one of the most beautiful I've ever read. I was not tagged to do this, but I'm going to tag Linda's World of Books, A Musical Bookworm, and Kate and Sarah. I would love to see what you guys have to say for this tag and what some of your favorite opening paragraphs are. I don't really remember opening paragraphs, so I had to go through about 20 books on my shelf to find 5 that really spoke to me, but I think I chose the right ones. Let me know down below what some of your favorite opening paragraphs are and if you've read any of these books. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see y'all again soon.